welcome to Night Colors Bigfoot Radio. It is April 24th, 2017, and you are here with Lori Phillips, Lauren Smith, me, and Ricky Smith. How y'all doing tonight?
I'd be doing fine if my daughter could remember my real name.
Oh my God, I did it again. Hey, listen, okay, I've known you as Lori Phillips for almost my entire life, and you had to go and get married again. That's not my fault. Not my problem. I will call you Mom. I do pretty well with that.
Okay.
So Lori Hood is here. She is battling the flu, or springtime in the South. We don't know which. I'd like to go ahead and make an announcement. Jeff Crypto Hulk Stewart has resigned from the show. It was a peaceful resignation. He has a lot going on. He has a lot on his plate in his personal life and his, squatching life. He rescues animals and rehabilitates them, and he's got a lot going on, and he decided to take a step back from the show. So you've got us three still, and we are hoping that he will step in and guest host sometime so that you guys get to talk to him still. But we do appreciate all the hard work that he put into Night Colors, all the great interviews that he did. He was a really great interviewer and a good asset, and is still a good friend to all of us. So maybe if you guys request him enough, he'll guest host sometimes for us. So anyway, that's kind of all I have. Do you guys have anything to add? Any happenings? Any news?
No. No, I don't.
I meant to mention this last week, but we are going to have stickers available of the logo here pretty quick.
Yeah.
Like possibly any day. They're going to be 5 inches in diameter, and we'll make a post on price later.
Yeah.
We haven't completely settled on that yet.
Yes,
so
if anybody is
interested
in buying some merchandise from us, we'll be putting that back into the show. It doesn't really go to line our pockets. We'll be putting it back into the show, putting together a better show for everybody. So we would appreciate that. And if you want to, represent Night Colors and support us and put us on your car or your hat or whatever you want to put your sticker on, and we're hoping to expand out into T-shirts and hats and all kinds of stuff like that later on, too. Thank you, Ricky. I forgot about that. Okay, well, if you guys don't have anything else, then I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys a little bit about our guest and bring him on. Okay. Night Colors Bigfoot Radio presents Michael Cook, the Kentucky Sasquatch Researcher. Michael Cook is a Bigfoot researcher, cryptozoologist, and author. He was born and raised in the deep, dark hills of southeast Kentucky and Harlan County. Michael has been researching sightings and encounters of unknown creatures for 17 years, this stemming from a face-to-face encounter with the creature believed to be Bigfoot while fishing on a riverbank. Active in the field, Cook has logged countless hours in the woods, conducting research and investigating numerous sightings. Michael founded and led the Kentucky Sasquatch Team for 5 years, filing over 350 sighting reports in and around the state of Kentucky. Disbanding the team in 2016, Cook has since created Cook Cryptid Research to use as a platform for his field research, expanding the search for not only Sasquatch, but other cryptid and paranormal encounters. He has been on several podcasts and radio shows. He is currently working on a new book about his memoirs as a cryptid researcher and collaborating with well-known researchers across the country and around the world. This is part of a documentary Michael Cook was featured in this year and is one of the seminars that he hosted. You can check out his YouTube channel, and he also has some other stuff to offer that he's branching out into, such as a new line of clothing. Very exciting. All right, we'll go ahead and bring him on. Michael, are you there?
Hey, everybody. How's it been going?
Pretty good. How are you tonight?
I am fantastic, you all. I'm on cloud nine being on night callers. I kept on telling people it was night crawlers for the longest time, and I had fishing. I had fishing people telling me, "Hey, man, I listen to night crawlers all the time." I'm like, I don't think we're talking about the same show here. So Ryan Reading actually corrected me the other day, so I apologize for that. But I am so happy to be here. How are you all?
We're good. We're really glad to have you. That's how she. We're really glad to have you on. I'm really excited to talk to you. Like I was saying earlier, you just seem to have a lot of experience and awesome. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and mute Lori out because worry, and I don't want to hear her, die on the show. Anyway, we are really looking forward to talking to you tonight. I have about 1 billion questions, so hopefully I let you get a word in edgewise. So if you just want to go ahead and jump in, we usually start with our standard question, which is what encounter led you to get into this topic? The life.
Well, in this topic in life,
how'd you get into the life?
I look back on my experiences now. I'm not an old man, but my kid makes me feel old. He's 8 years old now, and I've been doing this for 17 years, and it's unbelievable that 17 years ago I was a kid. I didn't know anything about anything, and all I cared about really was getting out and enjoying myself in the woods. We would ATV ride and hunt and fish, and fishing was always my passion. And it still is to this day, even though Bigfoot and other cryptids consume a lot of my time, I still find time to go out with my dad and my son and fish, and that's my release in life. I don't care about anything in the world. Bigfoot or life really doesn't matter to me when I'm out on the water. So, what got me into it, I use the word propelled a lot because unlike some researchers, that always had a curiosity in the weird and strange and unknown, I never was like that. I always found practical thinking to be the norm. And I always thought that people that believed in Bigfoot and Loch Ness monsters and aliens and all that were crazy. I mean, and I'm being straight up honest with you. I always thought it was BS, and people were just out here trying to make a name for themselves and make a dollar. And I was wrong, like so many before me, and so many will be after me. So I guess you could say that one day when I was 16 years old, I decided to skip school and go fishing. And with the permission of my parents, of course. I was a good kid. I didn't, skip school a lot and everything. So, every now and then they would let me, miss a day, take a day off work, if you will. So I found myself on a riverbank near Martin Spork Lake in Harlan County, Kentucky, where I was born and raised. The fishing there is phenomenal. That time of the year, the walleye run up the river, and it is, you know what I'm talking about. Walleye, that's my favorite fish, crappie and walleye. And I also love
that is the best. They're both the best to eat.
Oh yeah, absolutely, like honey butter melting in your mouth. And
you bake it in the oven?
I would normally fry it, roll it in meal and flour, and deep fry it.
You fry your walleye?
Yes, sir.
Oh man,
if it ain't fried, it ain't Southern, brother. But
try it in the oven, man.
All right, I'll shoot me a message on your recipe, and I'll try that next time.
All right.
But
when we catch a walleye around here, man, it's like gold. You don't you don't ruin it with batter or anything else. You just roll it up with a little slice of lemon, some olive oil, and just savor each little bite.
Well, I'll tell you what, anytime you want to have a fish cook-off, you're completely 100% invited to my house, and we will have a fish cook-off and see which one is better. And,
sounds good.
That's a deal, okay. But
good.
But I went to the riverbank that morning, and it was a beautiful day in October, and I didn't have a care in the world. I was catching fish, and I was throwing more back than I was keeping, and the whole time I was there, I kept on having this funny feeling like I was being watched. But you play that off. If you've been in the woods enough, you will get that feeling, and you play it off as something else. And after a while, I started hearing something move around the ridge line across the river from me. And I kept on trying to see what it was. I thought it was squirrels or maybe a deer or maybe some birds or whatever, but it started becoming more apparent that this was a lot bigger than any of the animals I just mentioned. So I automatically started thinking maybe it's an elk. And at that time, they just had released elk back in the wild here in Kentucky, and I hadn't really got a good glimpse of one. So I was kind of peeking around trying to see through the sunlight and all that. And, I finally said, well, screw it. I'm not going to see it. If it comes down the hill, then I'll see it. So I kept on fishing. And from out of nowhere, to this day, I honestly don't know. Anytime I talk about this, anytime I do a presentation about this, I always say the same thing. And this is 100% truthful, honest thinking here. I don't know what happened, why this thing done what it done. I don't know if it took a wrong step, if it slipped, if it tripped, if it just lost its footing, if the ridge was too steep. I still don't know, but I heard this loud crashing, and it almost sounded like someone threw a Volkswagen Beetle off the ridge. And I look up from where this sound is coming from, and I see this large ball of fur and hair just tumbling down the hill, and it rolled into the river. And I'm hearing grunts and stuff as it's rolling, and something that sounded like it was slapping the ground trying to stop itself. When it rolled into the river, my first initial thought was, this thing is big, it's covered in hair, it's a bear. I didn't think Bigfoot at the time, because Bigfoot didn't exist, right? And because Bigfoot was a myth, it was a legend. It was something your parents tell you about to scare you, and your brothers tell you so you'll scream and run to mommy and daddy in the middle of the night, telling Bigfoot's after you. And then, again, I was wrong. Stood up. It came up out of the water. It was around 50 feet from me. I mean, I had a really close visual sighting. And I saw this thing stand up, and I automatically, in my subconscious, knew it wasn't a bear. But in my full frontal conscience, I was still thinking, it's the strangest looking bear I've ever seen in my life. And it held its arms up, and it had these big, long arms, and it held its arms up out of the water, and it wiped its eyes, and it made its way across the riverbank, and reached up and grabbed a limb off a tree, and just yanked itself up a 5-foot embankment in one step. And as it's standing there, I've already dropped my fishing pole because I knew it was a bear, and I knew this thing was going to be really pissed when it would come out of the water. It could come out on my side, and I'd have to run for my life. I'm not going to jerk a fishing pole down the side of the hill running from something. So I dropped my fishing pole, and I'm standing there looking at this thing in in confusion and in awe, really, and sheer terror. But I'm watching this thing as it starts, just shaking its hands and shaking all the water off of it. And the whole time it's going through my mind, it's not dropping down on all fours. It's still on 2 feet. And that's the biggest damn bear I've ever seen in my life. And this thing's standing 8 foot tall, somewhere around 400 pounds. It's not overly muscular, but it's like a really tall basketball player. And I'm just standing there watching this thing, and it starts to move, and when it moved, it looks up, it straightens up, fully erect, and it turns its head and looks at me. And we locked eyes for just a split second. And the look on its face was, well, it would be like us if we fell down in the river. It was almost like it was embarrassed of what had happened. And it was just like, Jesus, I let this guy see me. What do I do now? So it done what it could do. It raised its arms up, kind of puffed its chest out, and it didn't want you to say beat its chest, but it brung its arms real close to its chest a couple of times and grunted just really loud 2 or 3 times. And that's when my feet decided to work, and I ran for my life to my car, which was a couple 100 yards away. And I knew this thing had jumped across the riverbank. I knew it was on my tail. I knew it was going to grab me at any moment. It was going to rip me apart or take me up in the mountains and eat me. I knew this thing was right behind me. And I got to my car, and I jumped in, and I locked the doors, and this thing wasn't nowhere around me. It was all the way back up into the holler by that time. It would never chase me. It just scared me off is all it done. So I'm sitting in my car, and I'm trying to get my bearings in line. I'm trying to rationally think this through. Now, what did I just see? What did I just see? It wasn't a bear. It wasn't a man. Was it an escaped, very large gorilla? What was this thing? And the whole time, I'm not coming up with a rational idea. So I start, I guess, hyperventilating. So I rolled down my window to get some fresh air. And as soon as I rolled down my window, I heard it scream up on the ridge, and I'm rolling my window back up. I keep my doors locked, and I sat there just in sheer terror. I'm deathly afraid of this thing, and you could hear it screaming just up on this ridge, and it was unlike any scream I'd ever heard up until then in my life. So after it calmed down and I calmed down, I decided to run back down to the riverbank, grab my fishing pole, grab my gear. I brought it back to the car. I got in, I left, and I became a shut-in for about a year. I didn't talk to many people. I didn't go home and say, oh, my God, you'll never believe what I just saw. I never said that. I never told anyone in that first year. And it got to the point to where it was almost a form of PTSD. I would not go out in the woods. I would not go on the riverbank fishing. You couldn't have held a gun to my head and made me go out on the riverbank fishing. And I would find myself waking up all hours of the night, every single night, seeing this thing look at me, seeing this thing run after me and grab me and take me off into the woods. I had nightmares that really caused problems for a while. My schoolwork went down. I had a job at the time, and I couldn't concentrate on it, and it destroyed a relationship with a girlfriend at the time. And after a year, I'll never forget this till the day I die. I was watching a show with my dad, and it was on some network, a science network of some kind, and it was talking about Bigfoot. And the all-famous Patterson-Gimlin footage that is on every single Bigfoot show there has ever been. It came on, and I just kind of look up, I'm glance up, and I see this thing coming down the side of the river, down the dried-up riverbank, and when Patty turned her head and looked, that was the moment that I realized what I saw. I knew right then and there that creature was something that I had witnessed. And my dad said, the moment of clarity came, my dad looked at me and he was like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No, I'm not. I have something crazy to tell you." And he said, "Okay." And I said, "Dad, I think I saw a Bigfoot." And he said, "Oh, man, the son, now you're, at the time I was like 17 years old. He's like, now you're 17 years old. What? I knew one day you would start experimenting with stuff." And I'm like, no, I'm not doing drugs, Dad. I'm not into that. I'm telling you straight up. And I told him what happened. And he said, "Okay, now let me tell you a story." And he told me about a Bigfoot sighting that happened to a guy that he worked with. And I realized that my dad didn't think I was crazy. So after that, I went out a couple of days later to the same exact spot. I built up my nerve. I grew up hair. It was warm. I took swimming shorts with me. I walked down into the water where this thing fell off at. You could still see where it had marred up the dirt and the mud on the side of the river from a year later, or a year before. And I stood there, and I stand right at 5'10", and the water was right up to my chin, a little over my chin. I had to hold my head up. And so this thing had 3 foot sticking out, 2.5, 3 foot above the water. So it was around 7.5, 8 foot tall, more around the 8 foot mark. It was twice broad across the shoulders than I am. So I'm guessing this thing was probably around 400 pounds. I didn't have a scale at the time, so I couldn't go out there and say, "Hey, man, you care to stand on this scale and see how much you weigh?" But the hair, I remember the hair was, when it come out of the water, it was black, of course, because hair gets darker when it gets wet. But when it fluffed up a little bit and dried off, it was a really, really dark brown. I mean, very dark brown with hints of red in it. And I always tell people, details are important in any sighting, but the whole sighting lasted maybe 35 seconds. And it takes a whole lot longer to tell about it than the actual sighting. And, as somebody asked me, what color was his eyes? Well, they were black, but I wasn't that close to see the irises or anything. What color was the skin? Well, the skin was black. It was a really dark brown or black one. It was really weathered. I know that for a fact. What about its head? Did it have a crested head and all this? No, it had a round head, not like a basketball round, but like my head. It didn't have a big peak on the top of it or anything. It didn't have an offset brow line or anything like that. It had a really flat nose, though. It was very large, like almost as wide as my hand is. And it just sat real flat against its face. And as far as exposed skin around its face, it had hair right up underneath its eyes. I mean, its cheeks were covered in hair, and like a little Fu Manchu coming off of it, and really short hair around the chest and body area. The longer hair was around its arms and off its elbows. Its elbows had probably 8-inch hair hanging off, and its arms were crazy long. I mean, the fingertips when it raised up before it grunted at me, its hands was a lot farther down than its knees. And like I said, as far as an exact measurement of this thing, no, I couldn't there would be no way. I couldn't. I just say 8 foot and 400 pounds. And, you know, over the years I've heard of bigger ones, and I said 8 foot one time in Montana, and somebody looked at me and said, "Oh, well, that's a baby, or that's a young one." I'm like, "Well, how big do they get out here?" You know. And Jesus Christ, my door jamb is 8 foot tall. So that's pretty much. And I hung out with a bunch of groups before, and I mean after that, and you know before. I've led my group and stuff, but, you know, I really and truly, like, done everything. I could write a book. I'm writing a book, and I actually have a chapter in it that I was actually reading earlier, and it said, "Mistakes were made." And I could actually write a book about the mistakes I made during my first 10 years of Bigfoot research. Mm-hmm. I really could. And if anybody says they've never made a mistake during doing this, they've never done it. And, I mean, getting out and acting like a pure, unadulterated moron sometimes. I'm right, you're wrong, and no matter how wrong I am, you know, and this and that. But, you know, I found a better... I found better knowledge and understanding with working with various other researchers than leading a group of my own like I did for 5 years. I collaborate with a lot of people now, and most of them are here in Kentucky, but I work with people out in Washington and California and Montana, down in Florida, North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, and places like that. I do a lot of collaborating now. Indiana, I'm getting ready to go on an expedition in Indiana in the next few weeks, so we'll get into that later, though. But that's really and truly the long version of what propelled me into this and made me the weirdo that I am.
Oh. Sorry. So
did you?
Oh, go ahead.
Did you ever end up going back to that fishing spot?
Oh yeah, I went back and I done that when I walked out in the river that day. I've been back several times. Actually, I've taken people there, and that's actually something that I've got to work on with my filmmaker. We're working on a documentary right now, and I actually need to go there pretty soon. It's changed a little bit. Not much. You would think it would change a whole lot in the last 17 years, but it's not changed that much. But it's changed enough where you can't see exactly. There's trees falling and everything there now, but it's funny that all in that area right there within like a 3 or 4 mile radius, I've gathered a bunch of reports, and at least 4 or 5 of them have been of a description of the same creature that I saw. I mean, exactly the same. So it would be safe to say, I don't know if it's still there, but it would be safe to say that it did hang around after his and mine encounter. And I say his because I didn't see physical female physicalities, any breasts or anything like that, and I get the question. Well, if you knew if he was a he, did you see anything else? No, I wouldn't look. I wasn't looking down below the belly button. I really wouldn't. I was trying to keep mine from falling off and running away. But that's the straight up truth. I have been there, and I'll go back. I don't have any irrational fear of that place anymore. I did, but not anymore.
How long did it take you to go back?
About a year.
Was it hard when you finally decided to bite the bullet and go back?
Well, I sat in my car for probably an hour when I got there that day. And I I sat there and I was just like, you know what, I don't think I'm going to do this. And then I'd open my door and I'd get out and I'd take a couple of breaths and I'd sit back down. You know, it really was facing a fear. I mean, and that's why I question anybody that is really, truly, like, over the top excited about Bigfoot sighting. And a lot of videos you see on YouTube and stuff. Oh, there's a Bigfoot. Look at that Bigfoot down there. No, in reality, when you see one of these things, it's going to screw your whole world up. And
I can imagine. I mean, it'd be something that very few humans have ever seen, other than like just stories or pictures that have been drawings. So to see something, I mean, it'd be like coming face to face with an alien.
Oh yeah, it'll make you rethink everything you've been taught. So, you know, it's an awakening experience on its own. It will broaden your horizons and open your eyes to brand new and weird things. So
you had that encounter, that initial encounter. How have you had other encounters since then?
I have, actually, and it took 16 years to get that. No, like visual encounters, it took 16 years. Other, what I've come to term as Class B encounters, which are wood knocks and whoops and howls and stuff like that, I've had numerous of those. The best one was out in Illinois, and we knew the creature was up on a ridge across from us because we heard it moving, and we never could get a spotlight on it or anything. And you know, I put my voice recorder on, and I'm standing there, and I right before I put my voice recorder on, I done just a small aggressive, you know, kind of a small scream. And I just flipped my voice recorder on, and I'm walking away because at the time I thought, well, this thing's lost interest, and all of a sudden you hear it on this recording, and it just raises everything on us, and it was a whole lot closer than what we thought it was. And I'm standing there in awe and amazement, and you know, a little pee coming out, and I'm like, did y'all hear that? And I turned around, and everybody left me, and I'm like, oh, well. All right, but that was pretty cool, and we actually a few years ago had a tapping contest with wood knocks with one. I think it was having just as much fun with us as we were it, and at no point did we ever feel like there was an aggressive tone in the air, and it wasn't like knick-knack, paddywhack or anything like that or nothing like that, but we'd tap a couple of times, and it would tap a couple of times back, and we'd tap 3 times, it'd tap 3 times back. And this was in a really remote area out in western Kentucky, and, you know, we went over and was like, you know, that could have been another person, but we never saw a soul out through there. Like, this was miles away from houses and neighborhoods and anything like this. So the chances of it being another person were slim to none. And, you know, we've had those encounters, but back last year, after disbanding the Kentucky Sasquatch Team, which I've done for many different reasons, but the main reason was I wanted to get back out into the field more. I was in the field, but I was doing more follow-up with sighting investigations and stuff like this and talking to eyewitnesses, and I couldn't get out in the field like I wanted to. So I used the time that I would have been talking to eyewitnesses now as field research time, and I'm a whole lot happier. I still listen to eyewitnesses and still report them and stuff, but, you know, I'm not focused on it. But after disbanding the team last year, I teamed up with a guy out of my area. He is a solo researcher. His name is Glenn Mink. And we became really good friends, and I think of him as a brother now more than anything. And we started researching about 20 miles south of where I live in a national forest, protected forest, actually. And so there's no hunting or anything like that. Beautiful overlooks and plenty of hiking trails. And the problem with that is where there's hiking trails in a college town, there's going to be a lot of people. But I'm a firm believer that these creatures that are in there are using that as some kind of training ground to learn how to interact with people without being seen, if that makes any sense. Because they have to learn what to do if they see a person and, how to hide from a person. So what better place to do that than a very heavily trafficked place like where we go. So we were on our first research trip down there, and it's a thrilling hike. It's like 8 miles round trip, and half of it is straight up and down. And I'm a fat guy, so I have to take a break every 15, 20 feet up the side of this mountain. But we got up to the first overlook and stuff, and didn't really have anything, what you say, Squatch related happen to us when we got up there. But when we were walking out to the overlook, and we had stopped just for a minute, and we heard a really low whistle. That I never heard a bird make. I've never heard anything like that make other than a human. And where it came from was over this drop-off that there was really no access down. So we're standing there kind of looking at each other like, what was that? What did we just hear? And, Glenn mimicked it, and I said, that's what I heard. And, we never could figure that out, so we kind of put that in the maybe category. But we went out on the overlook. We hung out for a little bit and, kind of collected ourselves, and we started to make our way out there. And when we got to the forks, it forked off like 3 or 4 different trails. And we're standing there talking, and I'm like, lightly arguing that this is the trail we need to be on. He's like, no, I think this is the trail we came up on, and this and that. And I'm looking at my phone, by the way, because I'm trying to pull up a map of where the hell we are so we didn't get lost. And Glenn says, what's that? So I look up, and I said, what's what? He says, and he points at it, and there's something standing in the middle of the trail about 75 feet from us. And I said, oh, that's another hiker or something, And he's like, look again, buddy. So I pulled my sunglasses off, and I look, and there's this thing standing there. It's probably about 6 foot tall, not huge, and it's kind of crouched down looking at us. And I said, Glenn, I don't know. That might be a bear. And he's like, no, I don't believe so. And we started walking toward it, and when we did, it raised up on 2 legs and ran out of there on 2 legs. We're standing there like, what in the world was that? And I said, dude, was that a Bigfoot? I mean, it wasn't very big, but was it a Bigfoot? And he was like, I don't know. So we start walking toward where it was standing at. We got up there, and there was what looked to be the beginning of a tree structure. And all these pictures and stuff that we took that day are actually on the Cook Cryptid Research Facebook page. So anybody who's listening can get on there and scroll down through the pictures and find what I'm talking about. There's twisted breaks there. And, he's like, let's do a wood knock, see if we can coax this creature back out. Maybe get a picture of it. I'm like, all right. So we do a wood knock and back off to the other way from which we were standing, the opposite way, we heard a clear, definitive wood-on-wood knock. And I said, dude, that was a wood knock. And he's like, let's try it again. So we tried it again. This time, the wood knock came from down the ridge from us. So we talked about it. We don't know whether they were trying to make us come to them away from that area or what they were doing. But nevertheless, they were returning wood knocks to us. So we walk up close, we followed where this thing had ran. You could see the leaves and stuff were pushed up and stuff where it ran through there. And I pulled my phone out. And I'm going to regret saying this because I'm not showing anybody. Because if I have to point something out, I'm not going to show you. I will send the video to you all individually. And if you all see anything, great. If not, I can't help you because it's a block squatch is all it is. But I pull my phone out and I'm recording. And I'm looking directly at this creature probably about 30 feet from us. And I'm like, Glenn's standing there right next to me. I'm like, Glenn, you can hear me on the video. I'm like, are you seeing this? Are you looking at this? He's like, which one are you looking at? I said, what do you mean, which one am I looking at? He's like, there's two standing there. I look right beside this one that I'm looking at, and there's another one standing there. It's the same one we saw on the trail. The one on the left that I was initially looking at was a lot bigger. And we didn't know how big it was until we done a recreation several weeks later. But, we got the video and everything, and Glenn took some still shots of it and everything, and you can see something in there. But for you to actually see what I saw, I would have to be right there with you, pointing it out, and I'm not doing that because it sets yourself up for too much ridicule. Mm-hmm. But we went back. Before I tell you that, we placed an apple. I'm not big on gifting. I think it causes bad habits for any animal. So if you're out there and you're gifting animals, whether it be Bigfoot, bear, or whatever, you're just setting yourself up for you're putting yourself in serious danger.
Right.
But anyway, I put an apple up in a fork of a tree. I actually had to climb up the tree a little ways, and I mashed it down into it. That way I knew, something would have to work to get it out. So we left. We came back a few weeks later during the late evening, getting ready to be dark, and we went straight to the apple tree, or the tree that had an apple in it, and the apple was gone. There was no remnants, no core, no seeds or nothing there. We placed a trail cam about halfway up the ridge. And remember I told you all that the climb is very extreme. I don't know what it's rated on trail rating, but it's pretty rough. So we placed it about halfway up the trail, 150 feet, 200 feet from the trail. And we get up on top. We look at the apple. We looked for the apple, couldn't find it. We found fresh tree structures. We done a recreation. And Glenn went out and stood where the first creature that I saw in the video was standing. This thing was 4 foot broader across the shoulders. Glenn's a little bitty fella, but he stands about my height. This thing was 3.5, 4 foot across the shoulders, broader than he is, and a good 3 or 4 feet taller. So you're looking at an 8 to 9 foot, 500-pound creature, a lot bigger than a bear that grows around here. But we determined that and the other creature, and then Glenn yelled at me. He's like, you need to come over and look at this. So I walked over there where he was standing, and up on the hill just 15 feet from him was a dome structure. Again, all these pictures are on Facebook. And So we determined that was a very squatchy area. So this is where I don't know how to segue into this other than just saying what happened, because I don't want to say, well, this is where it took a turn and it got into the really weird or whatever, and risk myself sounding woo or anything like that, which I don't have anything against, by the way. Mm-hmm. I believe flesh and blood. But we're walking down the trail. It's pitch black. And we're walking across this trail. And, we're kind of talking, but not really. It's just like, kind of just to break the silence, because it was completely quiet up there. And Glenn looks ahead, and he goes, well, here comes another hiker. And I said, what are you talking about? And he says, well, there's a light up there. And then I look up, and I seen the glow of the light, and I was like, oh, yeah, I guess that is another hiker. That's weird, because you hardly ever see anybody up there at night besides us crazies. And I said, hell, that might be another Bigfoot researcher, And then the light just disappeared. And I have no explanation for that at all.
Right.
And you could probably ask Glenn too, and he would probably tell you the same thing. There's really no explanation for it. I don't know enough about paranormal or supernatural stuff to really try to explain it. So I'm not even going to try to. I just know that there was a light, and then it was gone. Nobody else on that hill. So we get down through there, and we're talking, and we get to talking, and we get all the way down to the bottom of the trail when we realize, or let me back up. So we walk to where it goes straight down, and we're easing our way down this straight up and down part, taking our time, and all of a sudden this rock from nowhere comes whizzing through the air, and I'm talking this thing's the size of a football. And it's breaking limbs and stuff off these trees. And you could hear it like banging on trees going down the ridge. And Glenn is actually better at telling this than I am, because I have to admit to something that I don't like to admit to. But Glenn, in Glenn's words, he turns around, he's like, did you hear that? And that's when he hears me, probably about 100 feet from him, going, come on, keep up. It's going to get us. So I got a little coward in my blood there. So, whatever threw the rock, threw it with an aggressive nature. There wasn't no playing around or anything like that. So we get all the way.
I think I'd blame you.
Yeah, I told him keep up. And he'll tell you, don't go swatching with me. I will outrun you. I might be 250 pounds, but I will outrun an Olympian if I'm in danger, and I will move on with you. But we get all the way down to the bottom of the trail, and that's when I realized we passed our trail cam up. And I'm like, mighty, man. So we had to turn around and go right back up the side of that mountain on the steep part. We get up there to where we figured out where our trail cam was, and damned if it wasn't the same place that rock came from. And I look at him dead in the eyes, and I told him, I said, Glenn, I love you. Good luck. I'm not going over that hill. And he's like, are you serious? And I said, I'm dead serious. I'm not going over there. And he's like, why? And I'm like, I'm a daddy. You don't have kids, man. You'll be missed, but not like me. So, and I'm being 100%. That's the conversation that we had right there on the side of that mountain. And I was like, you will be missed, but not like me. I'm a dad. Mm-hmm. And you're going to have to take one for the team. If something grabs you, yell at me so I can get a head start. So he gets out of distance, and then I realize that I'm by myself. Not a very smart move on my part. So I'm like, hey, you need to hurry up. So he hurries up. He gets out there. He gets the trail cam. He comes back. We start back down the trail, and we stop and talk for a second, and all of a sudden we heard footsteps. And I said, did you hear that? And he was like, yeah. And I'm like, let's move on down the ridge. So we moved on down the ridge, and we'd stop periodically. And lo and behold, we heard shuffling. And I said, Glenn, we're being followed. We're being paralleled or something. We need to get off this ridge. You know, you start getting that feeling where it goes from fun to, you know, maybe this wasn't the smartest idea in the world. So we get on down through there, and we start seeing these little twigs snapped ahead of us. And I'm like, you know, that's not done from people. This is off the trail in some places. You know, I'm like, dude, they're messing with us. And they were. That's what they were doing. They were messing with us that night. And we get all the way down to the bottom of the trail where the parking lot is. And, you know, we stop and we're talking. And, you know, I said, let's just shut off our lights for a second. So we shut off our lights and we heard a wood knock way up on the hill. And I said, man, I don't know. I don't know if that's them telling us bye or whatever. But we haven't been back since, and that's not because we're scared or anything. It's just because of our lives. I'm extremely busy, and Glenn has a very active life also. So, but yeah, that particular area right there is where we go researching at, and you know, between him and I, we came to an agreement that we would not say the name anymore of this area, simply because, you know, not fear somebody's going to go in and steal our squatching area. If too many people go in there looking for Bigfoot, then they will move on. They will get out of that area.
I can see that.
So we don't publicly broadcast where it's at, but it's in central Kentucky. You know, so and people that have known me for a while know where we go. So it's not that big of a secret, but it is. But yeah, that's the second time that I've encountered them visually, and you know, that all the other stuff really made proof and made me a believer. But back in November, that really like drove the final nail into the coffin and said, all right, this is what we're dealing with. So 16 years at that time. It took, you know, I was a believer, I was a knower, but back in November, it really, really threw me into it and said, okay, you know, there's no other explanation. So, I'm sorry for being so long-winded.
No, of course not. Don't apologize. We're enjoying it.
Do you find days or nights to be better? What do you prefer?
It depends. I mean, daytime you're in your element, nighttime you're in their world. Daytime you're going to find a whole lot more evidence as far as like footprints and tree structures and stuff like that. Nighttime you're going to get a little bit more activity, which I've heard screams and howls in the daytime and wood knocks just as many times as I've heard screams and howls at night and wood knocks. So, summer, I would prefer to be out at night. It's cooler because, you know, common sense. In the winter months, you know, get out in the day, get in, get out, do what you need to do, go home, get you some coffee and warm up. So, preference, though, like right now, I'd rather be out in the woods than it like this tonight.
Yeah, definitely. So you've heard a ton of encounters. You've filed a ton of encounters. What was the strangest encounter that you've ever heard or had happen to you?
Strangest encounter? Oh, my God. I'd have to narrow that down to 3. I'm guessing all right, let me ask you a question. Are you talking about the most interesting encounter or just a flat-out scratch my head, I don't really know how to answer this encounter?
Either one. Tell both.
Okay.
It's okay. We got time.
So, my favorite encounter, let's just do that. My favorite encounter that I always go to is the one my dad told me about, and then I actually talked to the guy it happened to. And his name was Elmer, and he was a kid at the time, and they were coon hunting. And there was a storm rolled in on them. And they found a dynamite shack, a powder shack is what we call it in the mountains, but it's where they keep dynamite for coal mines. So they got in there to stay dry and dry off, and they're already wet clothes and everything. And after the storm passed, there was something fell off the ridge line onto the roof of the shack. And at first they thought it might have been a log or, you know, a rock or something like that until it ran across the roof and jumped off. And Amber said that there was 4 or 5 of them. I'd have to look back at it again to give you an exact number, but they were all kind of peeking out of the cracks of the shack and out the door and everything, looking to see what it was, because they kind of thought it might have been a cat or maybe a bear or something like that, or coyote. And Elmer said that, you know, he got down on his knees and looked through the bottom of the door, and when he did, he was looking eye to eye with something. And he screamed, and when he screamed, he fell back, and this thing fell back, and he said he almost described it as a smaller version of an Ewok. He said that it was a little hairy man. And, you know, today, in the report, I actually rewrote that report and put actual good, very well-worded it. So I would say it was a really young juvenile squatch. And when he screamed, it fell back, and, you know, it ran off into the woods. When they ran after it, and then they realized, you know, we'll have to have more guns, because their goal was to go in and kill it and bring it into town. I'm no kill, by the way. I don't believe in killing these creatures unless they provoke me. It's either me or them. I'm putting a 40 caliber size hole through their head. Again, I'm a daddy. I'm not going to be ripped apart by a Bigfoot if I can help it. But I'm not going to kill it for scientific purposes.
Right.
So they went back into town, and they grabbed some guns and went back up in the woods, and one of the little brothers of their friend followed them up there without them knowing it. Turns kind of bad here, but he got in the bushes trying to scare them, and they turned and blindly shot and killed him, and killed the little brother. And that's actually documented as a hunting accident. I've actually read that report. But the real true story that, you know, nobody would believe was that they thought he was a little hairy man. So that was my favorite story. The funniest story actually comes from out in around the crap. I'm forgetting. I should have had my book out here with me. It's in the southern Missouri area, close to Oklahoma. This little old lady got a hold of me a few years ago, and she said that she had a Bigfoot that watched TV with her every night. And I'm thinking, what? You know, I'm interested, but in a way I'm just like, all right, let's hear it. You know, I've heard them all now, so I'm prepared. And she said for the longest time, when she would watch TV at night, this creature would stand at her window outside the house and watch TV with her.
Huh.
And she said that her window was 7 foot off the ground. And I said, well, what do you think it was? And she was like, I think it was a Bigfoot. And she was just as plain, just like I was just then. She was like, I think it was a Bigfoot. I said, does it scare you? And she said, well, no, not really. It did at first. You know, and in so many words, she said, for it to get its tail off away from there, and she had a gun and this and that. And she said it was more curious of what was on TV. And she would sit there just about every night and watch her, and one day it just disappeared. She said it never did come back, and I haven't talked to the lady in several years. She was in her 70s at the time, so, you know, I don't know if she's still alive. She could be, but, you know, I lost contact with her and everything, but that was the funniest one.
I mean, I wouldn't doubt that story I've heard some other stories that I would doubt before that one because, I mean, just imagine you're walking through the woods, and it's the woods. They're not all that interesting. And you come across an idiot box that is, you know, flashing lights and voices coming out of this box. I mean, I'd probably stop and take another look, too.
Yeah, exactly. And if I'm telling what was in her garbage.
Yeah, that too.
You know, there's all kinds of attractants that these things come to your house for.
Oh, yeah.
For the most part, they do stay away from people's homes. I mean, I think they have that level of intelligence, but we'll get into the level of intelligence in a little bit.
Yeah. Well, we can get into that, or if you want, we've got about 30 minutes left, and if you want to cover their level of intelligence, and then I was going to ask what made you want to branch into other cryptids and paranormal things.
Okay, so
yeah, however you want to do that, it's your show.
Level of intelligence, real quick and simple. I don't think they possess the level of intelligence we do, but they do possess a level of intelligence of maybe a 5-year-old child, which is very smart, but also just curious enough and cautious enough to stay out of trouble.
Or to get them in trouble.
Or get them in trouble, yeah. So I'm a firm believer that not many people have ever seen an older Bigfoot. I believe that older Bigfoot know how to stay hidden. They know not to walk through soft ground. They know not to cross roadways, and stuff like that. I think the ones that people have saw, including myself, have been younger ones, have been teenagers or juveniles or whatever. I think Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin happened upon Patty by accident. I think that was just a shot in the dark. And I've heard the story from Bob Gimlin numerous times, right face to face, and it never gets old. You know, and if anybody wants to find an interview, I'll go ahead and do a shameless plug for a buddy of mine. The best Bob Gimlin interview you'll ever get is an unfiltered, unedited, stripped down Bob Gimlin in a camper with Ed Brown, and Sit Down with Ed Brown on YouTube. Check it out. It's the best interview you'll ever hear of Bob Gimlin. So what was your next question?
That was well said, by the way. What made you want to start branching out into other cryptids and paranormal?
I have been doing this seminar for a little while now. It's called the Bigfoot Experience now. It used to be, I just have changed the name actually, but it's the Bigfoot Cryptid Experience now. It used to be called the Bigfoot Seminar. And I've been several different places putting on presentations and stuff with people that otherwise wouldn't be invited to conferences and stuff to speak. Mm-hmm. So I started getting a lot of questions from people over the years about things like the Jersey Devil or Mothman or Ogopogo or Champ or the Loch Ness Monster or even aliens. And for the longest time, I couldn't answer anything because I was so compelled with Bigfoot. And a couple of weeks ago, well, let's backtrack about 8 months ago when Cook Cryptid Research came about, I started looking into more sightings and this, and I found that there's actually thousands of cryptid creatures out there that's waiting to be discovered, just like Bigfoot. And it's piqued my curiosity enough to research these creatures. Our most recent one was we went to West Virginia, Ed Brown and I, and we researched the Mothman. And I'll just tell you, there is something there. There's something that was there. Well, I don't know what it was. We researched there for a little while, and then we actually done a half-assed ghost hunt, impromptu ghost hunt, in a little hotel there that supposedly is one of the most haunted in the country. And 30 seconds in there, I don't know anything about ghosts, by the way. Like, I just find it fascinating. I've never been on a ghost hunt or anything like that. I'm smiling right now when I'm talking about this, but I'm being serious. I've never had a real interest into it. But we were in that hotel for like 30 seconds, and we heard a chair move, and I started videoing, and I was talking to Ed about what we just heard, and he says on the video, there's nobody there but us. The lady that was working there was on the 4th floor at the time, and there's actually a part in that video about 5 seconds in, you can see something walk past the window on the 2nd floor. And you can find that video on Cook Cryptid Research on YouTube. Just hit the subscribe button and check out all the videos. We'll do another plug for that in a little bit. But as far as cryptid creatures, I really, really want people to understand.
Right.
Most of the creatures that we know exist today, when I'll include the 4 major ones, okay, that are the kangaroo, the giant squid, the lowland gorilla, and the platypus. All those creatures right there we know exist 100%.
Mm-hmm.
But at one time, and the lowland gorilla, less than 100 years ago, people thought eyewitnesses to these creatures were crazy. They were considered cryptids. There was no way a man-sized, hair-covered beast was out there. Lo and behold, they found one, they brought it back and said, here it is. The kangaroo, people thought the Aborigines had lost their minds. And explorers, James Cook, no relation, Leif Erikson, and people like that came back from these explorations telling these creatures, and people thought they were crazy. And it's crazy to think that 2 years ago, up until 2 years ago, people thought the giant squid was a myth. And even though we've had bodies wash up on the beach for years and years, we finally got one 2 years ago on camera with the Mothman. Something was going on back in those days. And I've heard several different reports recently of Mothman sightings. There's videos produced every day of some strange creature. And, I'm a questioning kind of guy, and I will not rest until I have answers for my questions. So that's why I work so hard on this. Bigfoot, yeah, Bigfoot is my main focus. Am I an expert? No, God, no, I'm not an expert. I don't think there's any such thing as a Bigfoot expert or a cryptid expert, because you cannot be an expert on something that is not proven to exist. And until, as sad as this sounds, as sad as this is, and those who are listening will probably that don't believe this will probably lose their minds right now when I get ready to say this. But the only way we're going to prove any of these creatures exist is going to be a body. There's going to have to be a dead body. Either someone's going to have to pull the trigger, or they're going to find one dead, and it's already kind of too late to find one dead. I mean, if we were going to find one dead by now, we would have found one. I'm a firm believer that Bigfoot bury their dead bodies, and nature reclaims what nature gives. I talk about this in my presentation. You can go on YouTube and watch the decomposition of a deer. They actually lay out a little doe deer, and in 7 days, they put a camera over top of it. In 7 days, there's nothing left of it. A couple little maggots, crawling around, but there's no remnants of that deer ever there. And that's, you don't go out and find a bear skeleton, a bear body here and there. You don't do it. It's very rare you find a dead deer body in the woods, and they're abundant. So we're talking about a creature that's got a very low population like Bigfoot, and with Mothman and Jersey Devil, there has to be something going on there. There has to be some kind of reproducing going on. So, and I also dabble in a little bit of mysteries that, unexplained mysteries like D.B. Cooper. I'm actually, my YouTube channel, I'm actually doing a discussion on that in a couple of days. When I have some time, I want to sit down and give my theories and opinions and see what everybody has to think about that. But I'm a firm believer that D.B. Cooper, he survived the jump, he survived the landing, and he's probably dead now of old age because he would be in his early 90s. But, I'm firmly believe that he died an old man. So, along with Bigfoot and Mothman and all the other craziness out there, I'm a man of many mysteries, I guess. And with cryptid research, you're going to have cryptid gear, and that's my new company. We're actually launching that in September. That will be September 9th and 10th at CryptidCon in Kentucky, featuring the likes of Bill Brock and James Bubbo Fay and Cliff Barrettman and Lauren Coleman and Lyle Blackburn. All those guys are going to be down here in Kentucky at CryptidCon, and that's September 9th and 10th. And Cook Cryptid Research, brought to you by Cryptid Gear, will be there also. We're one of the featured booths, vendors there. And that will be the official release date of Cryptid Gear. But right now, you can kind of see a few things. I've got Squatch Knockers, which are custom wood tree knockers. There's T-shirts available on, through me. I'm getting ready to launch a website, so you all can find a better way to get a hold of me, except through PayPal. And I've got several different speaking engagements going on also, so, but with going back to the cryptids and stuff, that was my shameless plug for me.
That's okay. That's what you're here for.
There's so many out there. You could probably research one cryptid animal every day for the rest of your life and still not cover 3/4 of them. So it's best to keep a small research circle there.
Yes. Have you done much research into the Dogman, or had any encounters turned in over that?
I wish that I would have known more about Dogmen. up until the last year, because of 350 plus reports for the Kentucky Sasquatch Team, the ones that didn't make it to those 350 were about 70 that I passed on to dogmen researchers. So I don't really know a whole lot other than I think, and people can say this about Bigfoot also, I think dogman encounters are really and truly mistaken identities. Because I've seen the pictures all over the place of supposed dogmen. I saw several where it's been a wolf standing on its two legs against a tree, and somebody trying to claim that it's a dogman. Well, no, that's a gray wolf standing on its hind legs leaned up against a tree. So I think a lot of it's misidentification. And as far as classifications of Bigfoot creatures, what are there? There's like 6 of them, 6 different classes or something like that. I only know of a couple. And, there's varieties of these creatures. My creature didn't look identical to, the first creature I saw didn't look identical to Patty. And people say, well, do you think Patty was a hoax? Well, no, I'm pretty sure that Patty wasn't a hoax. And if it was, God bless them. That's all I can say, because they fooled us and fooled me, and I'm pretty good at hashing out hoaxes. I'll shut one down in a heartbeat, but I don't witch hunt and seek them out. I always find it fascinating for people with fake footprints, and then they expect to get it over on us. And I'm not an expert, but I am very knowledgeable about footprints, and I've investigated 42 footprints, casted 12. So, yeah, and I broke one, so I've got 11 footprint casts, with me. I know a footprint, and I like it when people try to pass a hoax footprint off. Like, yeah, that's not a Bigfoot footprint. Oh, yes, it is. Oh, no, it ain't. You might think it is, but if you bought it, I'll pay $200 for it. Great. You got ripped off.
What's the worst
I paid $4
of...
for my casting material and found my footprints out in the woods. Do what now?
Oh, yeah, no. What's the worst fake encounter or hoax type story you ever came across? Okay,
I got 2 that I used. One of them wasn't a hoax. One of them was a really, and you're going to love it when I tell you about this one, but the first one was a guy. Now, those people who know me and those people who have seen me on Facebook Live and on YouTube and stuff know that I have a little bit of an attitude. I'm what they affectionately call a dick sometimes, but I'm a cool dick. I'm the funny a-hole. And I try to be nice to people. I do try to be nice because my parents did raise me right. I had a guy, and he had a legitimate Bigfoot encounter. And he called me up, and, he told me about his Bigfoot encounter. I went out to his property and investigated and found these 2 giant poplar trees placed in an X formation. They were not cut. They had been broken off. There was no way this guy hoaxed that, okay? So the first part of his report is actually true. 3 days later, I get a phone call from him, and I closed the case, and I said, this is a Bigfoot encounter. If you have any problems, let me know. I'll try to get back out here and tell you what to do, even though I don't really know what to do. So 3 days later, he calls me. He's like, hey, man, I've heard some wood knocks and some howls and stuff. I'm like, well, that's probably normal. I wouldn't worry about it. Whatever you do, don't tear down the X structure because it could piss them off. So a week after that, he calls me back, and, you know, again, I can't stress this enough. I do have a life. I have a personal life, a Bigfoot life, and I try to have somewhat of a social life. Business life, Bigfoot life, personal life. That's how I rank it. But I talked to him again, and I said, man, you know, yeah, what's the problem? He's like, man, I just need to talk to you, and there was just same old stuff. And I'm like, are you scared? He's like, well, no. I'm like, well, I don't know what to tell you. Well, that night I get a picture from him, an email, and I pull it up on my big screen computer, and I call him up. I'm like, what am I looking at here? And he goes, oh man, you're gonna be looking for 2 Bigfoot in that picture right there. I took that earlier. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, I'm looking, you know, because I'm interested. I'm like, where are these things at? And I'm like, man, I can't see them. He goes, well, that's because they're cloaking. They're invisible. And I'm like,
oh, Jesus.
My eyes literally starts twitching, and I freaked out on him.
Oh.
And I was like, don't ever call me back again. I don't want to hear your BS anymore, and F you. I freaked out on him. I really did. And, you know, later I sent him a message, and I was like, hey, man, you know, I am so sorry for flipping out on you, but, you know, I don't buy hoaxing. I think they camouflage a deer, or cloaking. I said a deer has a form of camouflage that you can actually say it cloaks. It can disappear in the blink of an eye. But I don't see my reasoning behind this, and anybody that's listening that believes in cloaking, answer me this one question. If these things cloak and they can turn invisible in the snap of a finger, why have 250,000 people plus seen these creatures all over the world for thousands of years? And I guarantee you, not one of you people that believe in it can answer me that without having to come up with some crazy explanation. But whatever you want to believe in, I'm open-minded. Hell, I could go out in the woods tomorrow and walk upon a Bigfoot, he'd turn and look at me and completely disappear. And then I'll be on Night Callers Radio in 6 months going, I believe in cloaking, you all. But I'm a serious believer kind of guy. Unless it happens to me,
yes.
I don't believe in this supernatural BS. All right,
it's really
moving
funny.
on.
We had this conversation earlier, and Lori said that exact same thing. She said, I have to see it to believe it. She said, and I just can't get on board with it unless I see it. You know,
Well, I'm good friends with a certain doctor. I won't name drop, by the way. I'll name drop Ed Brown all day. Ed Brown, Brian Sullivan, Glenn Mink, Sam DeLoach. I'll name drop every one of them idiots. But I'm friends with a certain doctor out in Southern Oregon. And those of y'all in the Bigfoot community know who I'm talking about. I believe him, but I don't believe it's Bigfoot related. I believe it's something completely different that people are perceiving as Bigfoot. So I know several people have been out in Soha, Southern Oregon habituation area, and some strange things have occurred at the Circle K TED. But I'm going out there very soon. So if something crazy happens, you know, you'll see it, you'll know it, because I'll be on Facebook going, listen, I just got sucked up into the portal and I seen Rick and Morty, and you know, something like that. And I was waiting on somebody to giggle. but yeah, I believe in perception is greater than reality. I can take any of you three out in the woods. We can have an experience together, and we're all three going to tell you something different. That's just how it is. What you perceive is what you perceive. Now, what the good doctor and so many others, that's the thing. That's the crazy thing. He's not that much of, he can't manipulate that many people to see stuff like this. Something's going on out there, but I don't believe it's Bigfoot. I believe it's something else. And it's just like these people that talk about aliens and Bigfoot. Bigfoot is an alien and this and that. And say, well, I saw Bigfoot get dropped out of a flying saucer. Well, that's cool. I don't know anything about aliens, but I'm trying to learn. The thing is that why can't, I think it's purely coincidental. I think they're in the same place at the same time. And it's just coincidence. So that being said, you know, the other the other report that I was going to tell you about real quick, last year we had a snow, and I think it was the last snow of the year. It's like in March or something. And I get this phone call from this little old lady about 2 hours away from my home. And she was like, I've looked all over the place, and I Googled Bigfoot researchers and pubs in Kentucky, and I found your number. And I'm like, yes, ma'am. What can I do you for? And she was like, I think that I've had a Bigfoot cross my pasture. I was like, really? And she goes, I took pictures. It's okay. So she sent me pictures of these giant tracks in the snow. And I'm talking, these things are like 5 and 6 foot spread, straight line. That's what I'm looking for right there, is a straight line. I'm like, oh my God. This actually could be the moment, the greatest moment of my life, because I'm finally going to get to learn. I'm finally going to get to try out the casting in the snow technique. So I get in my car, gas it up, and I drive 2 hours to her house. I get there, and I'm excited and everything, and I see these tracks from the road, and I'm like, oh, my God, I'm going to have to call other people in on this one. I just can't. I got to share this. So I'm already on Facebook, and I'm like investigating a possible trackway through the lady's yard. May need help and this and that and all that. And I got my researchers from the Kentucky Sasquatch Team on the line. I'm like, guys, this is the real deal. We're going to be on the news and everything, because I'm going to call the news and everything. And I'm walking out there, and I'm like, this is amazing, because they were perfect. They were probably, 15 to 16 inches, inch footprints. And I get out there, and I have my camera ready, and I zoom in, and I see these little black turds in the middle of the tracks, and I realize that I just drove 2 hours. It's 28 degrees. I've done made a complete and total ass out of myself on Facebook for a friggin' rabbit trackway, and it had hopped down the snow, and it looked just like what you would think would be Bigfoot footprints in the snow. And I literally just sat down in the snow, and I had my hands over my head. She was like, are you okay? And I'm like, no. I'm not okay. I'm a long way from being okay. And she was like, I am so sorry. I'm like, listen, it's not your fault. You didn't know.
Man.
So there's the famous, I love it, because I always tell that story so people will know that we make mistakes. And that's the biggest mistake. I don't release nothing on Facebook anymore until after I've gotten the footprints and everything ready.
Oh, man. I mean, it sucks, but you have to go through these rookie mistakes.
Yeah, I'm such a rookie. I'm 17-year rookie.
I mean, learning experiences, I guess, is what I was
learning
trying to say.
Experiences. There we go. The thing about it is I tell people all the time, People ask me, do you, every time you go out, you have something Bigfoot related happen? No, I don't. In fact, I've quit more times than I would ever admit. And I think that's with everybody. I think everybody quits. And if you're getting into Bigfoot research right now, you will quit. If it's your first year Bigfoot researching, you will quit 15 times between now and the rest of the year. Mm-hmm. You will throw your hands up and give up, but something will suck you back in.
Yeah.
And you can say, I'm going to go out 100 times this year. And you go out 99 times. And you tell yourself, I've not had nothing happen to me. I've not heard a wood knock. I've not even heard a cricket fart. However, I'm going to go out one more time this year. If I don't have anything happen to me this time, I'm selling my tent, my backpack, getting rid of my hiking boots. I'm staying at home for the rest of my life. You go out that 100th time and you hear a wood knock in the distance, and it sucks you completely right back into it. So, it's really an addiction.
Bigfoot curse.
Oh, yeah, it's cursed.
Well, we are actually out of time.
Awesome.
We filled up the 90 minutes. We're definitely going to have a part 2 when you get your book finished, I was thinking. And maybe after the conference, you can come back on and kind of give us an update and, share everything. But we really appreciate you coming on and sharing all.
Do I have time to plug a couple of things real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, so next Saturday I will be on Tracy Arnold's Sasquatch Outlaws show. The 6th I'll be doing something for Tracy podcast conference. The 20th of May you can catch me along with a lot of other people up at the Ohio Bigfoot Conference. June 17th I will be the keynote speaker at the Paramount Lecture Series event in Pineville, Kentucky at the Pine Mountain State Lodge. I'll also have cryptid gear, T-shirts, and Cook Cryptid Research stuff with me. September 9th and 10th, CryptidCon 2017 in Frankfort, Kentucky. Come visit the Cook Cryptid Research booth and cryptid gear booth. And then October the 7th, 2017, I will be, this is weird saying this because it's how it's written down. I will be a celebrity guest at Hawkfest in Harlan County, Kentucky, and I will be taking pictures and shaking hands, or kissing hands and shaking babies. So
there you
go. And I will also be doing a lecture there also. So, and I've got a couple more things going on besides the book. That if you all don't care, go to Cook Cryptid Research on Facebook and like the page. Cook Cryptid Research on YouTube. Subscribe, check out the videos. I'm coming out with a big, huge ass announcement in a couple of weeks that's going to blow everybody's minds. And I can't mention it on any radio shows right now, or I would. But cool beans, I've had a great time tonight, you all. Thank you all so much for having me.
Definitely.
Appreciate
Thank you for
coming on, man.
And you just keep doing what you're doing, and we will have you back on for a follow-up show.
Awesome. Can't wait.
Awesome. All right.
Thank you for coming
on. Yes.
Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone. Y'all have a great week.